Alright, here we go. We're ready to talk about some video games. Yo, what's up? How's it going? Thanks for stopping by the House of Salt, the show where we talk about video games, game design, and the games industry in general. As always, I'm Bao, and today's topic may actually change the way you experience as well as perceive video games, because we're talking about game analysis and inspiration. And yes, the thoughts and ideas expressed here are my own and do not represent those of my company. So, let's go. So in the past, I mentioned that one of the most important skills in QA was the ability to analyze and break down systems in order to reproduce bugs. As I also mentioned, that skill is just as important and integral to game designers as well. So the ability to analyze other titles and break them down so you kind of get a sense of how they work will help you throughout your own design process and overall can help you grow and learn as a designer. For example, by being able to break things down, you can start to understand where a particular system or mechanic fits in a game, how it may have been implemented, as well as how it interacts with all the other mechanics and features around it. So one really important aspect of this is that it can also be used to identify the pros and cons of a particular approach. And this includes what to do, but just as important and equally as relevant is it can help you identify what not to do. In addition, you can also use what you've learned kind of as a starting point in order to potentially simplify or innovate with whatever approach that you're planning. And hopefully that will actually lead you to getting better results and doing them more efficiently. And also, it can also help you to identify what support you may require from other disciplines in order to create a similar system, feature, or mechanic, which allows for better communication, planning, and execution overall. And as with many skills, being able to accurately analyze and break things down is probably not something you'll be able to pick up right away, as an integral part of the process will come from experience, knowledge, as well as exposure to similar systems or mechanics. So in the meantime, however, even without experience, it's still a good idea to start to develop a kind of a mindset of being able to objectively and analytically look at a title and to start to be able to break it down into its individual components. This will actually be a little bit strange at first because you're trying to be looking at it from a more mechanical or developmental perspective, which to be honest has actually ruined a few gameplay experiences for me, but once you start to understand the mindset, you'll still be able to kind of detach yourself from the process and still be able to enjoy games as usual. So I'll give you a quick little example. So player character movement will often use one of two very distinct types of systems under the hood which controls how the character moves, and it's going to be animation or code-driven movement. Animation-driven movement is just as the name implies, and that is a majority of the character's navigation is solely based on the specifics of the animation itself. So when a character takes a step, the speed, timing, distance traveled, positioning, etc., everything is based on the animation itself, almost explicitly. So there may be some variance here and there, especially to help smooth out some transitions, but for the most part, everything associated with the character's nav will be driven by that character's animations. And conversely, with code-driven movement, all those same details will actually be controlled by, and you guessed it, the code. So what does that mean? So with code-driven navigation, you still have the character playing animations like normal. However, all the details under the hood, like the speed, timing, position, etc., are actually going to be driven by the code instead of the animations. So each system definitely has their own pros and cons, and are typically used depending on the type of game that's actually being created. So animation-driven movement games such as Assassin's Creed, the Arkham series, Enslaved, etc., they tend to have a more realistic look and feel to their animations, and while they definitely tend to have more weight behind them, they can sometimes feel a little more sluggish or unresponsive in return. So the flip side of this is with code-driven movement, games such as Fortnite, League of Legends, Street Fighter, etc., there's a lot out there, they tend to have a little more responsive or snappier controls. However, they also have their own sets of issues to deal with as well, things such as foot sliding and such. So just as an experiment, the next time you're playing a game or maybe watching a stream or something, take a closer look at the characters running around the game and see if you can spot what type of navigation system they're using in there. So some other examples of different types of systems that you can kind of keep a lookout for in order to kind of help working on that mindset are things such as offensive collision for melee attacks, enemy navigation and pathing for NPCs, and like another thing is look at how characters interact with elements in the environment. So like, picking something up, like opening a door, opening a chest or something like that. Try to take a hard look and see what's actually going on with all these different elements associated with those types of interactions. So another potential idea is to actually start to look up some articles on like, Gama Sutra or something, and read some of the articles written by some of the game devs on systems that they've actually utilized in their own games, and see if you can actually spot some of the elements that they're referring to in the game itself as well. So I know it's actually going to be a little bit tough at first, especially without any knowledge or previous experience on the subject, but see if you can spot the secondary elements that are being utilized by these systems in games, and try to guess how they're being implemented. So these are actually some of the challenges you're going to be facing as a designer. So being able to analyze and break things down is a great way to inform you on potential design choices. And at the same time, it can actually help you to open up different thought processes and approaches to other problems which you may not have considered before. And along those lines, keep in mind that inspiration can actually come in many different shapes and forms. So of course, everybody has their own perspective, thought process, and different ways that they can actually draw inspiration from things. But I just wanted to throw out some ideas in order to give potential new avenues towards gaining different types of inspiration. So obviously, playing video games is not only a great way to have fun, but also to get a sense of what's going on in the market and see what other companies are doing at the same time. However, people tend to look too strictly at similar titles or directly related titles when they're looking at things to reference in order to figure out ideas for their own games. Which is definitely a straightforward approach to it, especially when you're actively working towards a current deadline or something. However, don't forget to look outside the box as well. And just so you know, one of my biggest strengths during my career in the industry itself has been a wide breadth of knowledge, as well as exposure to a variety of different types of games and other media as well. So this has actually given me a pretty broad pool of knowledge to draw from when working on new designs. And as sometimes some of the more interesting ideas will come out from outside the norm. And by experiencing other genres, you can start to see parallels that you may have otherwise missed. And something to keep in mind as well, there's actually something to be learned from almost every single game out there. So when you're trying out something new, even if you're not really getting into it, try to play it long enough to get a real sense of what the game is about and what they're trying to do before you actually walk away. So by doing this, it'll actually give you a much greater opportunity to really break things down, to figure out not only what they did wrong, but honestly in this particular situation, to figure out what they did right. So of course, the flip side of this is actually just as relevant, if not more so, and just as important. And by that I mean even the highest rated games out there will have issues here or there and can be improved upon. Now the trick is to be able to identify what the issues actually were and what they could have done in order to, to have addressed them. And real talk, this isn't about nitpicking or ego. You know how people like to say, like, oh, I could have done that so much better. It's not about that. It's about being able to identify, process, learn, and grow. So that if you ever find yourself in a similar position, then you'll at least have a starting point, or be somewhat informed, or have potential options or things to think about. I know you're well aware of it, but I did want to reiterate, as it's a place that I've actually drawn inspiration from pretty consistently throughout the years in my experience. And that is, movies, TV shows, etc. are a great place to gather all different types of reference from. So, things such as themes, settings, character movement or attacks, VFX, sound effects, etc. Like, even like mood pieces and such, but it's amazing for reference. So one exercise that I would highly suggest is that whenever you see like a crazy Humble Bundle or like a Steam sale or something, and you see some games listed that you've never actually heard of, or maybe it's something that you've heard of but you never tried out, to take a gamble and actually check them out and see what you could actually learn from the experience. You never know what sort of inspiration may come from it. All right, folks, thank you so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed the episode, maybe drop a like, maybe comment below, share it with somebody else. So our next episode is actually going to be based on a requested topic where we discuss game balancing and focus testing. So it's going to flow. We'll see you then.